make use of the tools and resources that are available to them. We're also working on developing state-specific models, which I had spoken about earlier. That's not typically what you'll find nationally. Typically there are well-renowned groups such as SUNY who have their models and who a lot of organizations, a lot of sponsors and authorizers will go to them and well, we need to do application. Let's see what SUNY's doing with their application. Let's see what the state of Massachusetts is doing with theirs. What's going on in Colorado? And so everybody tends to, when it comes to application, when it comes to establishing a sound contract, when it comes to establishing a management agreement, if there's a management organization, they tend to reinvent the wheel because they're always looking to see what those best practices are and starting from scratch. We are working on developing models that, as I spoke about earlier, will allow our sponsors statewide to have something there. So when it's time to establish a contract with a school's governing board, they can have a model contract that they can use and tailor to their specific needs. Some contracts with some teeth in them, because one of the issues we found in Missouri over the last 8 or 10 years is that very often the contracts were so vague and did not have performance indicators built into those contracts that it became very difficult as a sponsor to hold a school accountable, and if they were going to make the decision to close the school, to non-renew the school, to be able to give specific reasons as to why, because there were no performance indicators in those contracts, and so we're working with them in that light. Also just trying to facilitate with them best practices and information sharing and develop a network of sorts for the sponsors so that they're not having to always reinvent the wheel. If you sat down with all of the Missouri sponsors right now and you asked them how they went about evaluating charter school applications, how they went about conducting site visits, there were financial concerns at one of their schools, how they went about investigating those concerns, providing assistance, you would receive 9 very different answers. And we want to maintain autonomy. We want the sponsors to have some autonomy and the schools to have that autonomy, but not at the sake of limiting their practices and limiting their abilities. And so those are areas we're working on as well.
Thank you. In addition to sponsorship, I mean, one aspect of having a quality charter school sector is to make sure that schools have resources in place from the very beginning when they open, so they open strong, so it doesn't take years for things to work out and for people to kind of get the programs up and running. The Walton Family Foundation is investing in new schools here in St. Louis. And Kathy, I just want to take a little different approach on moving from sponsorship to sort of new school stuff. Kathy, could you talk briefly first kind of what interested the Walton Family Foundation in coming to St. Louis, and then also in the states or the regions or the cities where you're offering support, where are you seeing the greatest successes? I mean, what are one or two traits that you're seeing in those areas?
Why St. Louis? We know that there's a strong charter law here, and we saw that there was room for real growth in the St. Louis community. We knew that there was a lot of donor support in Kansas City that wasn't quite represented here in the St. Louis community. And we thought we might have a greater impact in working here in St. Louis, especially when the mayor here decided to really support and get behind charter school, public charter school sector. In terms of communities where we see chartering working the best, I would say there are certain attributes. One, there are multiple authorizers, so there's not just one. We think that that's a dynamic process, creates the best quality and growth in the charter sector. But that's not it at all by itself. The authorization has to be strong. I mean, we've learned that over the years. We've been shown that by the work at SUNY, by the work at Chicago Public Schools, through the work we've seen in the DC Public Charter School Board, and some of the authorization in some of the districts in places like Colorado, California, and elsewhere, Indianapolis, for instance. So that the actual practice of authorizing makes an enormous difference on the